Hello.
Hey, Mike, what's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. Does this time still work for you? I got till 10 o'clock exactly, so.
Okay. Yep, I'm good. I
Cool.
thought it was at 11, but
Yeah, I think I sent a note too because we do daylight savings time, so I think that screwed people up because I realize there's parts of Canada that don't do daylight savings time, I guess.
oh, well, we're on daylight savings, so it's
Oh,
like
weird.
10:30 here, so we're
All
good. I'm
right, cool.
I'm a geo bachelor this week, so my wife's in Florida right now,
Oh, there you go.
which
They left you at home, huh?
yeah, I'm stuck at home. I was just walking the dog, and the dog's sitting there taking his time. Everything's still melting up here, so
Oh, you got lots of snow, it sounds like?
yes, still. It's annoying, but anyway,
Yeah, we do too. Yeah.
you're in the same scenario.
Pretty much, yeah.
We can't get away from it. So, how things been on your end?
It's been good. Just pretty busy, but overall it's been good. And my wife Jody says hi. Tell your wife
Jody.
hi too.
Nice.
But yeah, it's been good. Just busy trying to get some projects done and had the one study published, which is good. And then I got to get the other one was tentatively accepted with major revisions. So I'm trying to get that done hopefully in the next couple months. And yeah, made the fitness summit again and be presenting at Paleo Effects in Austin in a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's going good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we should get into a real topic, and then we can shoot the shit later.
Yeah, I got your little thing printed out, so.
Nice. So, yeah, everybody always wants to know about fat loss, and even some of my clients, they're still skeptical about, how we approach fat loss with different people, and so getting a little bit of a registered PhD on hand that does this type of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Talking about some of your let's talk about your metabolic flexibility.
Yeah, so the premise with that is, so everyone always wants to talk about if it's either fat metabolism, and then some people talk about carbohydrate metabolism, but most people when they're talking about fat loss, everything you read says, yeah, you have to burn more fat, and then usually the next couple words out of their mouth is, well, you have to be on a very, very low carbohydrate diet because carbohydrates are evil and they raise insulin and that's horrible and all that kind of stuff. And I would say if you look at the general population, do most people do better on a low carbohydrate diet? I would say yes, that's probably true. But they're not exercising a lot either. They're not that active, so it seems to work fine. Yeah. As you move into more of an athletic population, or people just, looking to lose fat, who are going to be exercising more, you put them on very, very low carbohydrates. They usually do good, in my experience, for 4 to 6 weeks, and then they just, everything just kind of seems to fall apart. And with metabolic flexibility, the premise is you don't really have to pick one or the other. You're training your body to use both of them efficiently. So when you're at rest, you can use a high amount of fat, which is the fuel you would want to use at rest. But when you go to train, if you do weight training, do a higher intensity exercise, you can still use carbohydrates effectively. So you would have, more carbohydrates in order to fuel your training. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing I look at with people's training is their overload that they're applying kind of going up, right? So are you gradually asking your body to do more and more work? And that's a massive stimulus for obviously burning calories, but increasing lean muscle mass, which also helps with sustaining the effects once you're done too. Because people can lose weight really fast just by, slashing their calories. But in pretty much every circumstance that happens, it's really, really, really hard to maintain, that, new weight or body composition once you get there.
Yeah. Agreed. I find the majority of the people just starting out do really good on a low carb diet.
Yep.
At least
I would agree with that.
Until they can, until their performance is at a certain level where they actually need some carbohydrates in order to help them perform better. And,
yep.
I use your little insulin, the little fuel gauge switch.
Yeah.
I use that in multiple seminars.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
That in the gym. That was the best idea. It's just kind of a really nice picture of kind of like, oh, I get it. So
yeah. So for people who haven't heard that, it's basically that, insulin's a fuel selector switch. And I think I actually initially stole that from Jeff Volek. I can't find it written anywhere, but I think I did. And it's, basically low levels of insulin push your body to use more fat. Higher levels of insulin push your body to use more carbs.
Yep.
And so like you said, it gives you a little bit of a way to actually move from one to the next via nutrition.
Yeah. Do you find that you have people really struggle with becoming more metabolically efficient when you're initially setting them up on a program? Like, say they've been on the typical like bodybuilding diet of eating, a little bit of carbs, a little bit of protein, and very little of any fats, but they're eating like periodic meals out of the day. Do you think there's kind of a rundown time for the enzymes to build up to burn more fat?
Yes. The people that I normally see that in is endurance athletes who are on very high amounts of carbohydrates. There are some bodybuilders that I see that in, physique athletes. Usually the physique athletes, the bigger issue is how long they can go between meals. So I was the same way. So for the longest time, I didn't eat hardly anything. My first year in college, weighed, 156 pounds and was the same height, 6'3". So then I read some of John Berardi's stuff for a while and went, oh, I need to eat more. So eventually over a couple of years, got to where I was eating, every 2 to 3 hours. And, that worked, really well. The downside was that from a lifestyle perspective, it was a monstrous pain in the butt. So I went on a trip to Europe with some friends, and I was like the world's biggest pain in the ass to travel with. They're like, what? You're grouchy again. You haven't eaten in like 2 hours. What the hell's wrong with you? And so now if you can have the ability to go longer periods of time without necessarily eating, I find that that's better. Obviously, that's going to be a switch to more fat-based metabolism, because insulin's going to go lower. There's not much coming in. And again, I'd say that works well for fat loss. So for bodybuilders, doing the very, very tight meal frequency, for a lot of them, it works really, really well. Even then, I still would want them to have the ability to go a little bit longer if they had to, and not feel like they're, going to gnaw their arm off. All their muscle isn't going to waste away, overnight. Yeah, I understand that it's not building that much muscle per se when you're fasting. I get that. But it for short periods of time doesn't appear to be completely detrimental either. In terms of people with really high amounts of carbohydrates, it does take quite a while to increase the body's ability to use fats. That's related to a lot of enzyme process and mitochondria and that type of thing too. That varies a lot from one person to the next. I'm much more of a fan of a gradual type approach, because you'll get, people that read something and, they'll say, oh wow, ketogenic diet. Oh, that looks awesome. I'm going to, start that Monday. So I'm going to go from really high carbs to almost no carbohydrates on Monday. And then they're like, God, I feel horrible.
Yeah.
And what I've seen just anecdotally is that appears to really, really dampen the amount of time it takes you to get a better adaptation. Yeah. It'd be like, if, one of your clients has never trained and they come into your gym and they go, hey, we're going to do deadlifts today. They're like, okay. They're like, we've never deadlifted before. Let's just start at 405 and I'll just yell at you and tell you to try harder.
Yes, exactly.
It's too high of a jump. Just start with 135 or 220 or 85, whatever. It doesn't matter. Wherever they're at is where they're at. And then each week just do a little more, yeah. A little more. That just seems to work much better.
Yeah, it's progressive resistance, only for nutrition.
Yeah.
I do a similar approach. It depends on who it is, but I mean, normally, like, I'll start them off on, like, my most recent experience is like, all right, you've been on this typical diet, you're having carbs with every meal. We're going to cut them out of just the one meal in the breakfast time period. Yep. And I want you to give me 10, meals, go on the internet, Google, find 10 meals that you can select from, and I'll preview them, and then those are the 10 meals you're going to stick with. And so that appears to be working pretty well. The only problem is the people are so scared of fat And,
Yeah.
it's still a big conundrum to me, like, how the word is not getting out there about, you know, fat is not a bad fuel source, carbs are not a bad fuel
Yep.
source. There was some recent controversy over meal timing recently. Who was doing that? I think it was Alan.
Yeah, Alan and Brad and James Krieger's ISSN paper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I only got snippets of that one because I'm on the floor most of the time. So
Yeah.
research is your thing, not mine.
Yeah.
What's your take on the overall meal frequency?
Yeah, their paper was cool. So it was actually looking at, is there a specific timing effect of having, carbohydrates and primarily protein before and after training? I read it. I thought it was good. I'm working on a letter to the editor on it. I like those guys. They're awesome. I like all the research they do. I think it's very cool. My bias, so when I read it, is that it kind of shows more that having more protein is beneficial, and the authors, clearly stated that in the article. I'm not quite so convinced that it provided that much info that's new on timing per se. And the reason is there's just not that many studies that only looked at timing. So a classic study is the Paul Cribb study, where they had everyone, pretty advanced bodybuilders actually, on the same, macronutrients, the same amounts, and they just took their pre and post carbohydrate protein beverage. I think there may have been creatine in it also. And in the timing group, they had that before and after training. In the non-timing group, they had it in the morning and at night. And in that study, they saw a pretty massive result. Granted, the study hasn't really been replicated either, so it's kind of the only one that seems to show a bigger effect. I'd say that my general thought and the takeaway is that for more advanced athletes, timing probably does matter. For the average person, probably not that much. So I always tell my clients in general, it's quality of food, quantity, and timing's probably third.
Yeah.
I'd say that's generally pretty good. The caveat is that in the real world, because I always get email after that from people that are like, oh, but you're recommending protein and carbs before and after, training. You haven't read the new research. You don't know what's going on. And the reality is, by telling the average person to do that in a non-controlled setting, I normally change the quality of what they eat. I also normally change the quantity, and I also change the timing. So I usually, by just telling them to do that, I change three things, right? Because usually they eat more protein. Usually they eat a little bit more carbohydrates if they were very low. They actually tend to eat a little bit less if they were super high carbohydrate, and then bracketing around their training time. Yeah. So I know on purpose I'm changing three things, but I did that on purpose because what does the client want, right? The client wants what's the minimal things that I can do to keep in my head to do consistently on a daily basis that are going to have a pretty, beneficial effect. And I've just found that by doing that in the real world, it seems to work pretty good.
Yeah, and even if, there's not that much benefit from influence the meal timing, which I think meal timing is very important just due to our lifestyle structure. But,
sure.
What's not going to help about having some extra protein and carbs after your workout? I mean, the loading will go into the muscles more or less, or at least you've earned those type of calories to go in there. So I figure that's a good solution. And, a lot of it's kind of like the cost to benefit ratio. I mean, studies are always going back and forth between, well, exercise isn't really the key stimulus to help you lose weight. It's your nutrition. And, we both know that in an ideal world, it's both. It requires both efforts. You can still lose weight through dieting alone, but what kind of weight are we talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, the exercise is the stimulus to help you keep the muscle and kind of train your body how to use calories efficiently versus.
Well, yeah, and I agree. It's always, you have to look at what is the downside effect, right? So there really isn't much of a negative effect of timing. It didn't impair performance or all these, bad things didn't happen. And exactly that. It's like, okay, so if you're not recommending that people exercise, what do you tell them to do then, right? I understand that nutrition has a massive effect for fat loss. I totally agree. But, if you look at everyone who's done sustainable weight loss, pretty much all of them have done some form of intelligent exercise too, and the exercise has, bazillions of other benefits too. So.
Yep. Yeah. Body's a unit. You got to treat it like one. So.
Yep.
So, Renee's doing your eating for performance. Sheesh.
Describe it. Metabolic flexibility for fat loss. For high intense athletes.
Yes.
Cool.
So she's having some good results off of that. So we're prepping for our powerlifting meet, and she's gone back and forth between pretty much paleo because she has a little bit of gluten intolerance and whatnot.
Sure.
A lot of people are facing nowadays, and she's having some really good results with it. She's not too limited on her carb selection and whatnot, so she's a little bit more freer, and she's having some good results. You want to give us a heads up on that program, or?
Yeah, so it's primarily written for people that are more, I would say, higher intense athletes. So people that do CrossFit, do a fair amount of weight training, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty heavy on science stuff, but not in a bad way. I tried to make it, and I had some good help editing and stuff from James and the other guys at ETP. So it's science-based, but relatively easy to read. You don't need a nutrition dictionary to get through it, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I read through some of the...
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. The last thing, it's like...
It's even better for me because I know you personally, so
yeah.
It's like laughing inside my head, like, yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah. Because, people can read a nutrition book, but is that really that helpful to most people? No. The flip side is there's a lot of stuff, I think, on the market that's just not based on anything. And I don't have any problem if people say, here's my anecdotal experience and here's what I found. The issue I have is when people are like, well, here's the mechanism, and they get the mechanism just like completely wrong. It's like they're not even remotely close. So try to make it as accurate to the research as possible, but, blending with what works in the real world. And it's based on metabolic flexibility. So it's a plan to show you how to take a stepwise approach to add it into your routine. And it's pretty interesting that a lot of the CrossFit people who had, very limited carbs in the background, you have them increase carbohydrates usually before and after training, and you get like just, crazy testimonials. One guy like a couple of weeks ago sent me one that he added, I think 15 pounds to his clean and jerk in like 2 weeks, and he had been at the same weight for like a year and a half.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so pretty crazy stuff. And the nice part is that people reported that it's easier to follow too. It's not, my goal was to think in sort of expansion, not restriction. So everybody says, okay, you just have to keep doing less, eat less, your life is horrible, it sucks. And kind of took the opposite approach of, the goal is to, do more, be more, eat more. I think I got that from Lonnie Lowry. So it's structured in a way that you actually, for the most part, don't really cut your calories all that often. You're trying to do more higher quality work in the gym, and I just think on the mental side, that's just much more better, because you can look and see, oh wow, I actually did more here, I did more there, oh, I added more lean mass, oh, my body composition got a little bit better. Yeah. I just think all around it's much more sustainable on all fronts too, which is nice.
Yeah, I really like the emphasis on the performance, because ideally that's what we all want to. We want to be able to move better. We want to be able to perform better. And the aesthetic part is all, second nature, or should be. People get caught up on the aesthetic part, and the aesthetic part comes when your body is built to perform better.
Yeah. So you can give examples of, sprinters and high-level athletes and gymnasts and, all that kind of stuff. And so I always think of it as performance-based fat loss. The biggest thing, that biggest problem I see people happen where their fat loss goals almost always stall. And the first question I ask them is, what is your performance? We go back in, we track a bunch of stuff. And almost every time their performance does that. And that's just, at some point, if you're trying to get uber lean to step on stage or something, is your performance going to drop at some point? Yeah. But even then, your goal is to keep it as high as you can or maintain for as long as possible too. So even in that extreme situation, it's the same principles that you're still applying.
Yep. And all it takes is a little shift, and a lot of people can do pretty remarkable stuff. I'm training a gal right now who's training for her first physique competition, and, I've kept her diet pretty consistent, but I've added certain carbs in just as a, kind of a stimulus to help keep her metabolic engines going. And she's actually gained mass and strength during the whole process.
Nice.
So, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
awesome.
now in the last week that she's starting to feel the fatigue and just like, okay, I feel it now. It's coming to that point, and I'm like, okay, well, we need to step back a little bit from some of the heavy stuff, do some more light stuff, and last week it's coming up next week, so it's gonna be pretty
Nice.
good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool.
So, alrighty. Let's talk about one of my other favorite topics, the controversy between research and anecdotal evidence.
Oh, yeah.
So, this is huge for me. Like, it's so hard to pinpoint research and connect it to real life scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any tidbits of thought on that one?
Yeah, so in general, I always look at the sort of the what versus the why, right? So for what, it's like, what did you do that, allowed you to perform better, fat loss, that type of stuff. Anecdotal evidence, I think, is better to try to determine what works on a small scale, individual type level. The why is probably more research based, even down into mechanisms and that kind of stuff too. The hard part is that I think both of them matter, but for clients, the what is always greater than the why. So if you had a client come in and you did some program of whatever, and they got a really good result, they were very, very happy with it, but you violated, let's say, every research law known to man, right? They're not going to care, right? They're like, okay, it worked, right? And that's where people get hung up too. They say, well, I did this, it worked, so here's why I think it worked. The why they think it worked a lot of times is just a guess. And I don't, have any problem people saying that it's a guess, but when they try to justify, well, here's the research, and then it doesn't really match up well, and they're trying to take a square peg and fit it into a round hole, that becomes a little bit harder. So, one second.
Yep.
I'll get it, sweetie.
Oh, okay, thanks. I'm almost done. Sorry about that. That was just my client. So
that's okay.
So I think they're both applicable. So the hardest part for me is that, so obviously I've done a PhD, did a master's, did a bachelor's, did all this stuff. So you get people that are like, well, you're not really sure what's going on. I'm like, well, here's the research, here's what I based it on. And so other people are like, well, you don't have 15 years experience coaching people. It's like, well, no. Do I coach some people? Yes. Do I work with clients? Yes. But you'll never be on both sides, right? So I'll never have enough research publications to make all the academic people happy. If someone already has 15 years of coaching experience, then they're always going to have 15 years more coaching experience than I would, even if I switch tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I think in the middle is actually what's interesting, because you're trying to take, here's the research, here's what I think's going on. Okay, let me try this and see what happens. Now that doesn't guarantee, because of a bunch of other factors, that's true. But ideally then I could go to someone who does research and say, hey, here's what we're thinking, try this out and see what happens. And that happens a lot of times. So like Jacob Wilson and his guys, Ryan Lowry in Florida, are testing a lot of metabolic flexibility stuff now with higher amounts of protein and fat in the morning, and then either timing carbohydrates around training and seeing some pretty interesting results. So to me, that's really cool, to see other people that are trying to bridge, that gap between the two also. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every day is like a science experiment, and everybody you take is like that N+1 experiment that, okay, well, objectively, we know this works 90% of the time. We're not necessarily sure why it works, but, here's some of the research that could point in that direction. And that's kind of how I try to base my own training on training for myself and my clients. It's like, okay, this is what I've seen work in the past. It may work for you. And just based on, others' in reporting, and then, here's some of the science behind it. But I mean, most people don't care about the science. They just want it to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I love, talking to you guys and, a bunch of people I know that do basically train clients, full time, where my stuff's a little bit more split between research, teaching, and clients. Because I can ask them, I said, hey, what have you been doing because you have much more experience? What have you found that works? So then I'll go look into the research and see, is there some mechanism, and then be like, hey, could you try this or that? And then, so kind of going, back and forth, and that's what I do on myself, and even a lot of times with my own more advanced clients too. And to me, I think that's what you learn, what works, because like exactly what you said, the clients are paying for a result. They don't care about the research per se, but I think knowing the research and knowing that aspect drives you to allow you to get a better result for clients too. So I think it's actually kind of both of them back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, being your clients here, let's finish up with some of the stuff that you've been doing, and what did you wanted to talk about your I can't remember your email. Yeah,
so I have a free fat loss 6-part video series if people are interested. Just go to www.miketnelson.com. So MikeTNELSON. Enter their email address, get sent out to them. So what I did with the course is just tried to take, here are sort of the top principles in very short, just 20-minute videos, and then go do this, and then here's the next one, go do that. And it's been pretty cool. I got an email from a guy a couple months ago, actually, who just found me online, went through and did it, and in like 4 months, I think he lost 30 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
Strength went up. So yeah, it's actually
cool. And it's a really easy program to follow too. So I signed up for it just to kind of see what.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I try to make it research based, but make it applicable. So, okay, do this and you'll get, 40-ish% of the results, right? And so it's easier to do.
It's always about the 80-20.
Yes.
80% of the things right. And so 20% just falls off the wagon.
Yep. No, that's totally true. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mike, it's been great talking to you. I'll let you know when I have my blog up so you can kind of peruse through it.
Yeah, for sure.
And, maybe you should get some of those axle deadlifts I know you like doing so much, and I'll put those up too.
Yeah, I've been doing the first strongman competition in January.
Yeah, I saw your post on Facebook. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah. I wasn't quite ready, but the hardest part is to treat yourself as a client. So it's like if I were a client, what would I tell me to do? Well, shut up and go do it. Oh, okay.
That's where you hire somebody else or get somebody else to do your coaching for you. So Boss Kurt's been helping me with my bench press.
Oh, cool. Nice.
First time ever, 315.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool.
Eventually, well, hopefully I can hit that number in the powerlifting meet. But you know what? I'm just going to do one just to say I've done it, and then I'll just work with it from there. Because initially, hey, it's all a competition, and you just go and do the best you can, and then you build upon that, right?
Yeah, the first one's a PR competition, right? So you're good.
I'll probably start low, and I'll just be creeping by. I'm like, okay, I got room and maneuver for next time.
Yeah. I always tell people, your first meet, pick the easiest. You should be able to do a triple on your worst day with no sleep just for your opener. Just do it, get it in, and then worry about the rest after that.
Exactly.
The worst thing you can do is miss your very opening squat. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had an epic max squat failure yesterday. I had my camera set up because I was training in the morning, and 4:15. Would have been, my new PR.
Oh, nice.
I get it all loaded up, and I do the lift, and I go to check how it looks on video to see if my depth's good. And it shows me getting ready, getting all set up, and then it cuts out. I'm like,
oh. I just got to do it again now.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Mike.
Cool.
Well, it's been great talking to you. I wish I would have had a little bit more time to shoot with you, but I'll get in touch with you later and we'll do this again.
For sure. Sounds good. Thanks, man. We'll see you.
Bye, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Good luck.
Thanks. You too.